The case of Celeste Mano. Celeste Mano was born on November 30th, 1997, in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. She was the younger of two children of parents Agudero and Tony Mano, and was raised alongside her older brother, Alessandro. Even though her parents separated when she was young, her father stayed involved in her life, offering financial support and maintaining a relationship with his children. Celeste was a friendly and energetic student who liked sports and dance. At first, she hoped to become a lawyer and enrolled at the University of Melbourne to study criminal and civil law. However, she eventually lost interest in law and shifted to studying advertising and marketing. In 2018, she secured a job at a fast-growing e-commerce company. She advanced quickly in her career, rising from a call center employee to a department head within just a few years. She was regarded as one of the company's most promising workers. Celeste had always been someone who drew attention, especially from men. However, she was extremely selective about her partners. Meanwhile, one of her co-workers, Luo Isiko, had been interested in her from the moment she joined the company. He was nearly 16 years older than she was and displayed no signs of career ambition, staying in the same subordinate role for many years. Despite his quiet personality, Luis Seco was polite and friendly. He frequently asked Celeste out, but she always refused. Instead of accepting the rejection, Luis Seco chose to interpret her refusals as a challenge or some sort of game. He convinced himself that Celeste was simply being hard to get and became determined to win her affection. Even with her obvious disinterest, Lua Isiko continued trying to attract her attention through different methods. Celeste found Lua Isiko's persistence irritating, yet she attempted to remain calm, hoping that he would eventually lose interest or turn his attention elsewhere. However, Lua Isiko's fixation on Celeste kept growing stronger, developing into an obsession that everyone around him became aware of. Celeste confided in a close friend and co-worker that she would never consider dating Luis Seco for several reasons. Firstly, she considered him strange and unpredictable. Secondly, she was not drawn to men who lacked ambition and personal goals. Lastly, the large age gap between them also played a role. Even though she felt sympathy for Luis Seco, she understood he had no chance with her. Luis Isiko's persistent pursuit of Celeste resulted in a serious mistake. He began neglecting his job responsibilities. Because of this, his performance declined sharply, which management quickly noticed. Luis Isiko was given 3 warnings and reprimands before being fired in early autumn 2019. As he packed his things in the office, he looked close to tears, clearly heartbroken by what had happened. Before I continue, I want to remind you that only a small percentage of people who watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you enjoy my content, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind later. Now let's move on with the video. Celeste feels relieved when Luis Seco finally stops bothering her, yet she also feels guilty, believing that her actions played a part in his termination. Manel, serving as a department manager, thanked Luis Seco for his years of service and walked him out of the building. As they said goodbye, he patted Luis Seco on the back and genuinely wished him well. The terminated employee, Luis Seco, then reached an unexpected conclusion. He believed Celeste had been reluctant to start an office romance because she was his superior and it could jeopardize her career. Now Luis Seco thought that nothing stood in the way of their happiness and that they could be together. Overwhelmed by emotion, Luis Seco suddenly kissed Celeste on the cheek. Stunned by his impulsive action, Celeste was speechless. She immediately turned around and rushed back into the office without saying anything. Lua Isiko misunderstood her reaction, assuming that Celeste had feelings for him and that he should continue pursuing her. After being dismissed, Lua Isiko created a social media account and sent Celeste a friend request, which she initially accepted. However, once he began asking to meet and go out, she politely refused and eventually blocked him. Undeterred, Lua Isiko made another profile and sent her a new friend request the following day. Celeste attempted to ignore him, but he kept commenting on her photos, praising her looks and implying they would make a perfect couple. To limit Luis Seco's contact, Celeste changed her profile settings to restrict messages, comments, and posts to her friends only. Even so, a week later she began receiving romantic messages from an unknown number, which she suspected came from Luis Seco. The messages contained poems he had written, admiring her beauty and trying to convince her to go out with him. This was especially unsettling because Lua Isiko had never possessed her personal phone number while they worked together, as she had only interacted with him through work communication channels. Celeste initially tried to address the stalker by answering one of his calls. She explained that a relationship was impossible and urged him to stop contacting her. Unfortunately, Louis Sacco did not accept what she said and instead fixated on how much he loved hearing her voice. Despite Celeste's efforts to block him, Louis Sacco managed to bypass these attempts by calling from different numbers each time. Feeling harassed, Celeste eventually changed her phone number, but to her shock, Louis Sacco obtained her new number within a week. Celeste had been attempting to protect herself from Louis Sacco, a crazed admirer, for nearly 6 months. Even after blocking Louis Sacco's number and fake social media profiles and ignoring his messages, the harassment went on. The messages shifted from romantic to aggressive and threatening, eventually followed by demands to meet Celeste. Celeste did not realize that Louis Sacco had started following her from work to her home, learning where she lived. At first, she caught sight of Louis Sacco near her residence, but she assumed it was simply her imagination. However, once she understood that Louis Sacco was truly following her, she knew she needed assistance. Celeste chose to request police protection, hoping to obtain a restraining order that would prevent the stalker from approaching her or her house. The police officers dismissed Celeste's concerns, appearing to make light of her plea for help. They argued that Louis Sacco had not committed a crime, since sending explicit poems or fantasies in text messages is not illegal. Without proof of Louis Sacco following her or lurking near her home, Celeste was instructed to leave the police station. Celeste continued facing harassment from Louis Sacco on a frequent basis. During the day, she noticed his car parked across the street from her office, and at night, he would drive past her house multiple times. This constant presence made her feel uneasy. In August 2020, Celeste returned to the police station, this time presenting photo and video evidence on her phone that proved Louis Sacco was indeed stalking her. A different officer took her statement and treated the matter more seriously, expressing surprise at his colleague's earlier lack of concern. He instructed Celeste to go to court immediately, where a restraining order was granted against Louis Sacco, forbidding him from contacting or approaching her in any form. Louis Sacco's sudden absence brought Celeste relief and a sense of freedom. However, that feeling faded quickly. Less than a month later, she began receiving text messages from unfamiliar numbers. The messages were from Louis Sacco, who initially begged her to withdraw her statement and remove the restraining order, claiming that it was harming their romantic relationship. Over time, his tone shifted from pleading to demanding. Celeste promptly reported the messages to the police because Louis Sacco's behavior was an obvious breach of the restraining order. As a consequence, he was fined and warned that any further violations would result in severe penalties, including the possibility of jail time if he continued harassing her. After this event, Louis Sacco remained quiet for nearly 2 months, making Celeste believe he had finally given up. Celeste met Chris Reedsdale in September 2020, and they soon found they shared many similar interests, life values and goals, which led to a romantic relationship. She confided in Chris about the harassment she had endured from Louis Sacco, who had been silent for more than a month but still caused her concern. Chris made a deliberate effort to help Celeste feel safe and supported, offering her constant care and attention. A month later, in early November, Celeste decided it was the right time to introduce Chris to her family during dinner. Her family greeted Chris warmly. The following weeks passed without incident, and Louis Sacco made no new attempts to contact Celeste. She was happy, spending all her spare time with Chris, and it felt as though she had finally stopped worrying about Louis Sacco. On November 15, 2020, they went on a date at a cafe where they sat together, enjoying each other's company. Celeste suggested taking a selfie to remember the moment. Celeste adored the photo so much that she chose to set it as her profile picture on social media. By doing this, she also wanted to announce her new relationship and make it clear that things were becoming serious. Chris uploaded the photo as well, adding a heartfelt caption declaring his love for Celeste. Sadly, this date became their last. After dropping Celeste off at home, Chris said goodbye, planning to see her again the next day. Celeste spent about an hour in the kitchen with her mother, Eggy, before going to bed early to prepare for work in the morning. On November 16, 2020, Eggy was abruptly awakened around 4 a.m. by the sound of shattering glass. At first, she assumed the noise came from outside, But then she heard more alarming sounds, including banging, screaming, and commotion, which seemed to be coming from inside the house. E.G. hurried out of bed, put on her robe, and rushed to her daughter Celeste's room. As she opened the door, she saw someone jumping away from Celeste's bed and escaping through a broken window. When Eggy turned on the light, she was horrified to find her daughter lying in a pool of blood, covered in cuts and small pieces of glass. Celeste was struggling to breathe, her eyes wide open and staring upward. Eggy immediately called an ambulance and tried to stop the bleeding from her daughter's deep wounds while waiting for help to arrive. Tragically, despite their efforts, Celeste died before the police and paramedics arrived. Medical examiners discovered more than 20 stab wounds on the victim's body, with the fatal injury being a stab to her heart. After examining the scene and comparing it to Eggy's testimony, the police concluded that the attacker entered Celeste's room through the window and carried out the assault in under 3 minutes before Celeste's mother entered the room. The attacker used a large butcher's knife, striking wildly, and Celeste attempted to defend herself, as shown by the many cuts on her arms. When questioned about whether Celeste had any enemies, Eggy mentioned Luis Secco, who had been harassing the victim with calls and threatening messages for more than a year. This information was confirmed by other relatives, friends, and co-workers. The suspect left behind numerous bloody fingerprints at the scene, along with DNA on a fence he climbed over while fleeing, likely due to an injury to his hand. As a result, it was essential to detain and question Luis Secco immediately, since he was the main suspect in the case, and to verify and compare all evidence and witness accounts. Luis Secco was promptly taken into custody, but initially insisted he was innocent, professing his love for Celeste and claiming he could never harm her. However, forensic analysis quickly disproved his claims. His bloody fingerprints were found both in Celeste's room and on the fence bordering her property, linking him directly to the crime scene. The investigation revealed a prior restraining order that prohibited Luis Secco from approaching Celeste. Notably, the night before the crime, he purchased a hammer and a large knife from a local hardware store. The store's surveillance cameras recorded him buying the items at checkout. It later became evident that he used these tools to commit the violent attack, smashing through a window to enter Celeste's home and fatally stabbing her with the knife. The evidence against Luis Secco was overwhelming, showing he had been observing his victim for a long time and knew everything about her. The breaking point came when she posted a photo of her new boyfriend on social media. After that, Luis Secco bought a knife and hammer and slipped into the victim's home at night with the intention of harming her. His actions appeared intentional and premeditated. Luis Secco's personal life was characterized by instability. At 39, he had never married, still lived with his parents, had few friends, and struggled to maintain employment. He also came from a family with a history of mental health problems, including a brother serving a long prison sentence for a serious offense. Luis Secco's lawyer argued that he needed specialized treatment instead of imprisonment. However, this argument angered the victim's family, who feared that Luis Secco might avoid punishment. Psychiatric specialists ultimately determined that although Luis Secco did have mental health issues, he was fully aware of his actions when he committed the crime. He had planned the details beforehand, meaning he would have to face trial. The murder trial was scheduled for the fall of 2023, 3 years after Celeste's tragic death. In the years leading up to the trial, Luis Secco attempted to claim that he was mentally ill and not responsible for what he had done. He spent much of that time in a psychiatric facility. During the trial, Luis Secco remained calm and distant, appearing uninterested in the process. He admitted his guilt, but asserted that he had not intended to take Celeste's life, only to win her love. Nevertheless, the jury unanimously convicted him on all charges. Consequently, he was sentenced to 36 years in prison, with the chance of parole only after serving 30 years. Celeste's parents pointed out that their daughter had reported the perpetrator to the police as early as 2020, seeking protection from him. However, her complaint was not accepted because of a loophole in the law at the time. This prompted calls for changes to the legislation, which would later be known as Celeste's Law. Moving on to the next case. The case of Daniel Wozniak. Costa Mesa, California is situated between Los Angeles and San Diego on a coastal plateau overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Despite being an affluent region, it still maintains the relaxed vibe of a beach town. No one anticipated that this scenic area would become the setting for Julie Kibushi's tragic end. Sam Har's parents, Stephen and Raquel, became concerned when they realized they had not heard from him for some time. Sam was supposed to visit them that weekend, but he never showed up. On May 22, 2010, his parents, Stephen and Raquel, went to Sam's apartment. When they arrived, they encountered a horrifying scene. Stephen, panicking, immediately called 911. During the call, he told the police that there was a dead woman lying face down in his son's bedroom, her clothes partially torn and blood dripping from her forehead. "Do you know where your son is?" the dispatcher asked. "No, I don't," he replied. But Sam was nowhere to be found. The case stunned the Costa Mesa community, where homicides are extremely uncommon. When police arrived at the apartment, they found no evidence of a struggle. The apartment was tidy and showed no signs of a fight. The space contained typical bachelor belongings like empty beer bottles, used cigarettes, and an outdoor grill, all of which were fairly clean and orderly, until they entered the bedroom. In the bedroom, police found an unused knife on the nightstand and several books, including a fighting manual and another titled The Wonders of Sex. The most disturbing discovery, however, was on the bed. It was soaked in the victim's blood. The dead woman was lying partly on the bed and partly on the floor, her pants pulled down, exposing her lower body. Police believed she may have been sexually assaulted before her death. She had been killed by 2 gunshot wounds to the head, one to the top of her skull. Although there was a knife on the nightstand, it did not seem to have been used. Strangely, she was wearing a crown, and the back of her sweater read, "All yours." Her purse was found in the kitchen, and her driver's license identified her as 23-year-old Julie Kabushi. Julie was born on Valentine's Day 1987 to Japanese-American parents June and Masa Kabushi. She was the third of their 4 children. Her parents affectionately called her "my Valentine girl." From a young age, Julie developed a strong passion for dance and music. Her mother said Julie began tap dancing at age 5, and her love for the activity only grew with time. According to her friends and family, she was an extremely cheerful person. Her upbeat, bubbly personality brought laughter to everyone. She radiated positivity and frequently helped her friends when they needed support. While honoring her Japanese heritage, she also embraced a free-spirited, all-American lifestyle. After graduating from the Orange County School of the Arts, she pursued fashion design at Orange Coast Community College. There, she developed a close friendship with 26-year-old Sam Har and even tutored him in anthropology. She had no idea that her kindness would eventually lead to her tragic death. As police examined the crime scene, they sought to determine what had happened to this vibrant young woman, Julie. The evidence strongly suggested that Sam was her killer. Because she was found in his apartment and he was now missing, the police needed to look further into Sam Har's life. Sam Har was born on May 29, 1983, in Los Angeles, California, to Stephen and Raquel Kalberman. As an only child, he received plenty of affection from his parents. His father worked as a special education teacher, while his mother stayed at home. Sam had a close bond with his parents and visited them frequently. Sam was large and athletic, and friends described him as a big teddy bear. As a young adult, he joined the United States Army, serving a tour of duty in both Afghanistan and Germany with the 173rd Airborne Division. After 3 years of service, he was discharged and returned to Southern California to use the GI Bill and complete his college education. Sam intended to finish college and then re-enlist in the Army as an officer. He enrolled at Orange Coast Community College, where he became friends with Julie, who was 3 years younger than he was. However, after 3 years in the Army, Sam developed PTSD, a condition commonly seen in veterans. Police wondered whether he had lost control and carried out the crime during a moment of overwhelming emotion. When Julie was discovered dead in Sam's apartment and he was nowhere to be found, detectives suspected that he had fled the scene after committing the murder. Their suspicions deepened when they found text messages on Julie's phone from Sam. At around 2:45 p.m. on May 21, 2010, Sam messaged Julie saying he was going to help a friend and then head to his parents' house. However, just 2 hours later, his messages shifted. He contacted her repeatedly, pleading for her to come over. The urgency in his messages made it evident that something was amiss. Concerned for her friend, Julie agreed to visit, saying she was willing to support him like family. Sam's messages showed that he had planned for her to come. Additionally, Sam's car and passport were missing from the apartment, leading police to assume he was trying to escape arrest. With his passport and car gone, it appeared that Sam would soon be identified as the killer. But police were about to learn that the situation was far more complex than it first seemed. Back in 2002, when Sam was 18, he had been charged with murder along with 17 others in the stabbing and beating death of 19-year-old Byron Benito in Canyon Country. On January 15, 2002, Sam, who had known Byron since childhood, picked him up and drove him to a spot behind a mobile home park where a group of suspected gang members attacked and killed Byron. Although Sam was charged with murder, he was eventually acquitted, but this did not lessen the police's suspicions of him. Sam's family believes he is innocent, but the police remain convinced they are pursuing the right suspect. Because Sam is trained in firearms, police assume he is armed. Fearing they are dealing with a dangerous criminal, they issue a warrant for Sam's arrest. Meanwhile, Costa Mesa police begin tracking Sam's cell phone and credit card activity in an effort to locate him. They discover that he has made 4 ATM withdrawals since disappearing. In addition, his credit card was used at a pizza delivery restaurant in Long Beach, California, located just 20 miles from Sam's home. Police hoped to find Sam on the surveillance footage, but when the bank produced the ATM recording, they were stunned to see a teenager in a hoodie and baseball cap withdrawing cash from Sam's account. Neither the police nor Sam's parents could identify the teenager. Police suspected he may have been helping Sam escape or hide. Costa Mesa investigators were determined to find him. On May 26, 2010, they learned Sam's credit card had been used at another pizza delivery service and began tracking the delivery driver. After obtaining the delivery address, they rushed to the location, believing they had finally uncovered Sam's hiding place. However, when police raided the home, they did not find Sam, but instead encountered 17-year-old Wesley Frelick and several friends. Although initially suspected, police quickly ruled Wesley out as a suspect, yet he still had Sam's credit card in his possession. Wesley then shared a surprising account that police had not expected. He explained that he had received the credit card along with instructions to withdraw cash, but said the card had not come from Sam. He claimed that Daniel Wozniak, a local stage actor he knew through community theater, had given him the credit card. Daniel said he was a bail bondsman who needed to collect money Sam owed. While many people might have refused, Wesley viewed Daniel as a brother and, unaware of the seriousness of the situation, agreed to help. A total of $1,900 was withdrawn from the account. Daniel Wozniak's name drew police attention when they found an invitation to Daniel's upcoming wedding inside Sam's apartment. But who exactly is Daniel, and what is his connection to Sam? Did he assist Sam in escaping, or was he directly involved in the murder? Many questions remained unanswered. Daniel Wozniak, born March 23, 1984, is the youngest of 3 brothers. Because his parents worked long hours, he spent much of his time with his grandparents after school. Growing up in a wealthy household, Daniel and his family often took extravagant vacations. He was considered a good student, consistently earning top grades. He frequently used pranks, singing, dancing, and magic tricks to capture people's attention and loved being in the spotlight. Recognizing his talent for performing, Daniel began acting and singing in musicals in his early 20s. Although he was open-minded about his future, he never managed to hold a steady job, moving from one low-paying position to another. Nevertheless, he maintained his passion for acting and continued performing in theater. It was during one of these musicals that he met his dream partner, an actress. After a brief courtship, they decided to marry on May 26, 2010. The police located Daniel while he was celebrating his bachelor party in Huntington Beach, California. He was connected to Sam Har because they lived in the same apartment complex. Authorities suspected that Daniel may have helped Sam hide or escape, or that he could have been involved in Julie's murder. With an arrest warrant in hand, police interrupted his bachelor party. Daniel's expression shifted when he saw the officers, and they took him into custody for questioning. In the interrogation room, Wozniak initially claimed that his only wrongdoing was participating in credit card fraud and helping cover for Sam. He explained to police that he and Sam had planned to drain Sam's bank account with Wesley's help, then claimed the credit cards had been stolen. However, Daniel said that before they could execute the plan, Sam made a shocking confession. He added that after this confession, he had dropped Sam off at a local shopping mall and had not seen him since. Despite this, police suspected he was still shielding Sam and that he may have had a larger role in Julie's murder than he admitted. Investigators took a DNA sample from Daniel, which appeared to make him nervous. As he attempted to stay composed, the police sensed something was amiss. Almost immediately, he began adding more details to his statement. When asked to explain what happened to Sam, Daniel replied, "I told him I needed to move some objects in the theater. I said, 'Lift this up.' As he bent down, I grabbed the gun. I had never fired a gun before, so I pulled the trigger and shot him." Police realized that Daniel was worried his DNA might be found at Sam's apartment, despite his efforts to downplay the matter. Under continued pressure, Daniel repeatedly changed his story. After a brief pause, he admitted that he knew about Julie's murder and that he had helped Sam escape. When police reminded him that they had his DNA, he insisted it did not match anything found on Julie's body and maintained that he had no involvement in her murder. Authorities expected him to reveal more, but he abruptly tried to end the interview. Aware of the gravity of the situation, the police pressed him further, warning that he could be arrested for being an accessory to murder if he did not provide full disclosure. Daniel also faced personal stakes. His wedding was scheduled in just 48 hours, and he did not want to miss it. Under this intense pressure, he began to break down, causing the dynamic of the questioning to shift. Police, noticing his distress, intensified their approach by falsely claiming they had found his DNA on Julie's body. In reality, it took weeks for the DNA test results to return, but Daniel did not dispute this claim. Instead, he explained that his DNA was present because he had been right above her. When his fabrications were uncovered, he made a shocking confession. This alarmed the police because initially only one gunshot wound had been found at the crime scene. It was only after an autopsy that a second gunshot wound was discovered. Daniel's confession indicated that he had been present when she was killed, making him an accomplice to the murder and allowing the police to formally arrest him. Even though Daniel was in custody, the police still needed to locate Sam, and Daniel remained silent as they searched for clues about Sam. While in prison, Daniel called his fiancée Rachel Buffett. When Rachel chose freedom over love, she told him that she would speak to the police about the case. Daniel realized that he had to speak to the police before Rachel did. Suddenly, he panicked, desperate to reach a deal with the police that he had refused just hours earlier. But what he told the police this time was beyond their imagination. The story begins on May 21, 2010, when Daniel asked Sam to help him with a task, moving some boxes in the attic of a theater at a local military base. While Sam was busy moving the boxes with his back turned, Daniel suddenly pulled out a gun and shot Sam in the head. At first, Sam did not know what had happened, but when he realized he had been shot, he begged Daniel for help. Without hesitation, Daniel raised the gun and shot Sam a second time, killing him instantly. After killing Sam, Daniel proceeded to send Julie messages from Sam's phone, inviting her to Sam's apartment. Without any remorse, he abandons Sam's body in the attic and spends the night laughing, singing, and dancing, as if he had not just taken an innocent life. That night, Daniel returns to the apartment, and when Julie arrives, he shoots her twice in the head. He then staged the crime scene to make it look as though Sam had attacked and killed Julie before fleeing. Daniel was also determined to conceal Sam's body. In a desperate and gruesome act, he returned to the loft and severed Sam's hands and head to hide his identity. He dumped the body in a nearby park. Despite these horrific actions, Daniel returned to the theater as if nothing had occurred. Police later discovered photos from the film's parties showing him laughing and joking with other crew members. The motive for these shocking murders was even more disturbing. It was entirely about money. Daniel had been struggling financially for a long time and was facing eviction, having been 2 months behind on his rent. He also had no way to pay for the lavish wedding honeymoon he had planned. When Daniel discovers that Sam had $62,000 in savings from his military service, he makes the cold-blooded decision to kill 2 innocent people to fund his extravagant wedding and vacation. When the police discover the backpack containing the evidence Rachel mentioned to Daniel, it becomes clear just how damning its contents were. Daniel's brother, Tim, was told to dispose of the backpack, but instead threw it over the fence at their parents' house. The backpack contained numerous incriminating items, including Sam's financial information, passport, bloody clothing, and most importantly, the murder weapon. Daniel's DNA was discovered on these items, placing him solely responsible for the murders of Julie and Sam. The evidence was overwhelming, including DNA, spent shell casings, and the victim's financial records. Everything the prosecutor could possibly require, including the murder weapon itself. On December 16, 2015, after a trial that lasted only 5 days, Daniel Wozniak was convicted of 2 counts of first-degree murder. On January 11, 2016, after just 1 hour of deliberation, one of the shortest death penalty trials ever, the jury recommended the death penalty for Daniel Wozniak. On September 23, 2016, the judge sentenced him to death. It seemed there was no end to the deception in this case. Years later, police discovered that Daniel's ex-fiancée, Rachel Buffett, not only knew about the murder plots, but had also lied to the police. Although she denied all charges, she was arrested and charged with 3 felony counts of being an accessory after the fact, based on allegations that she had repeatedly lied to the police. On September 12, 2018, she was convicted of 2 of those charges, carrying a maximum possible sentence of 44 months. On November 8, 2018, she was sentenced to 32 months in prison and was released from prison around 2019. Moving on to the next case. The case of Jayden Parkinson. Jayden Parkinson was born on September 26, 1996, in Folkestone, United Kingdom, and she is the youngest of 3 children. Her parents had a troubled relationship, and family issues eventually led to their divorce when Jayden was only 7 years old. Jayden lived with her father. Although she lived with her father, her relationship with her mother, Samantha Shuri, remained strong. Jayden and her mother spoke on the phone every night. As Jayden entered her teenage years, her life became increasingly unstable. Her father often neglected her. She began smoking and drinking and moved back and forth between both parents' homes. At the age of 13, Jayden ran away from her father's house and moved in with her mother, eventually obtaining a court order that allowed her to stay there. Jayden was in a relationship with Ben Blakely, whom she met at the age of 14. Blakely had a profound effect on her, gradually transforming her over time. Jayden was 15 when she began dating Ben, who was 20. The considerable age difference worried Jayden's mother, but she was unable to stop her daughter from falling in love. At first, their relationship was affectionate and romantic, but it slowly deteriorated, and their relationship became more and more strained. Ben controlled every aspect of Jayden's life. She stopped wearing makeup and became increasingly withdrawn. He dictated what she wore and cut her off from family and friends. Because of this, Jayden left her mother's home and moved into a shelter for women who were victims of domestic abuse. Although the shelter's rules forbade Ben from visiting, he continued to exercise total control over Jayden's life. Jayden and Ben often argued, and at one point, Jayden even warned the shelter staff about Ben's aggressive behavior toward her. Ben maintained significant control over Jayden, dictating her every move and limiting her freedom. He confiscated her mobile phone, convincing her that she needed nothing but him. Ben also banned her from interacting with men and monitored her online activity. As a result, Jayden stopped going to school. Jayden's communication with her mother, once a daily routine, was reduced to just 1 or 2 conversations each month. Her mother, Samantha, urged her to return home and leave Ben, but Jayden refused. Ben's control over Jayden was both psychological and physical, and there were occasions when Jayden was seen with visible bruises on her face. On November 30, 2013, Jayden told her mother that she was pregnant. Hoping to change Ben, she believed that the baby would bring positive improvements to their relationship and to his behavior. Jayden imagined that the baby would bring them closer, and that Ben would become the caring person she first fell in love with. Sadly, Ben did not change. Once he had complete control over Jayden, his true behavior surfaced. He isolated her from everyone, leaving her financially dependent on him. The situation escalated to the point where Jayden was confined to her room, even needing permission to use the bathroom. Without Jayden's knowledge, Ben was secretly dating other women, controlling and manipulating them in the same way. Samantha found out about her daughter Jayden's pregnancy and begged her to come home, but Jayden refused, not wanting to cause her mother additional stress. When Jayden informed Ben about her pregnancy, he became furious and denied being the father. He even threatened to post intimate photos and videos of Jayden on social media. Fearing that Ben would carry out his threat, Jayden reported him to the police a few days before she went missing. Ben possessed approximately 30 explicit photos and 13 videos of Jayden, which she desperately wanted to keep private. On December 3rd, Jayden failed to return to her hostel for the night. Aware of the difficulties in Jayden's life, the police attempted to locate her but were unsuccessful. They contacted Jayden's mother, Samantha, by phone, but she had no knowledge of her daughter's whereabouts. On December 4th, 2013, the police received a report that Jayden was missing. They contacted Jayden's boyfriend, Ben, to see if he had any information regarding her disappearance. However, Ben was uncooperative and hung up multiple times, claiming he did not know where Jayden was. Since Jayden had run away from home on several prior occasions, her initial disappearance did not immediately raise alarm. The following day, Ben was arrested and taken to the police station, though not directly in connection with Jayden's disappearance. The arrest was due to the report Jayden had filed a few days earlier, expressing fear that Ben might post her private photos online. The police questioned Ben, who denied any intention of posting the photos and was released on bail the same day. Samantha distributed flyers containing Jayden's picture. In addition to flyers, she used social media to publicize Jayden's disappearance, hoping to generate leads for the case. The police examined surveillance footage. They collected camera footage from the motel where Jayden resided. The footage showed her leaving to meet Ben, but not returning to her residence. On December 3rd, Jayden was seen again at Oxford railway station. Surveillance captured her walking inside with Ben, with nothing unusual occurring in the video. After tracking their movements, police discovered that Ben and Jayden had taken a train to Didcot, a town approximately 10 miles from Oxford. Jayden's last known location was the Didcot railway station, where footage showed her and Ben leaving the building. Previously, whenever Jayden ran away, she typically contacted her family within a day or two to confirm she was safe. This time, however, was different. Jayden had not contacted family or friends, and there was no activity on her social media accounts. After reviewing footage showing Jayden boarding the train with Ben, he became the prime suspect in her disappearance. Police were confident that Ben knew Jayden's location and what had occurred. The footage revealed that Ben returned to the train station alone, and Jayden was not seen again. 1 week later, on December 10, 2013, Ben Blakely was arrested by the police. They intended to question him about what had happened to Jayden after they left Didcot station together. At that stage, police had not ruled out the possibility that Jayden might have been hiding voluntarily or that Ben was holding her. During interrogation, Ben appeared confident. He claimed to have no knowledge of Jayden's whereabouts. According to him, he and Jayden had broken up, and she was now in a relationship with someone else. Ben suggested the police focus on speaking with Jayden's new boyfriend, believing that person might have more information regarding her disappearance. He seemed indifferent to Jayden's situation, asserting that because they had broken up and he had a new girlfriend, her circumstances were irrelevant to him. He recommended that police check Jayden's social media accounts to gather information about her recent activities and interactions. Ben Blakely was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping and murder, even though Jayden was still missing. Police interviewed Jayden's friends to determine if she might have gone to a safe location, but they discovered that she had distanced herself from friends after beginning her relationship with Ben. As a result, no one knew whether she had a place to hide. During the search for Jayden, a taxi driver from Didcot provided crucial information to the police. On December 4th, at approximately 1 a.m., the taxi driver picked up a passenger on a dirt road. The passenger, a young man carrying a large, heavy suitcase covered in mud, needed help lifting it into the taxi. The driver became suspicious, wondering if he might have inadvertently witnessed a crime. Investigation revealed that the person who called the taxi had used Ben Blakely's mobile phone. When questioned further, Ben refused to provide any additional information. Analysis of his phone location records showed that Ben had visited several sites in Didcot, including a disused rural shed where a taxi had picked him up that night. A team of police officers and sniffer dogs searched the shed as part of the investigation. It was also discovered that Ben and Jayden had visited the shed earlier. Police found a bracelet matching Jayden's near the scene. Trained sniffer dogs indicated the presence of a body inside the shed, but Jayden's body was not located. This led police to suspect that a large suitcase was involved when Ben entered the taxi. Authorities appealed to the public for assistance, requesting that anyone who saw a man carrying a large suitcase in the Didcot area come forward. Meanwhile, officers conducted interviews at nearby homes to gather further information. Footage from the train station showed that Ben and Jayden had not been carrying suitcases, prompting police to question where Ben had obtained them. It was also possible that the man described by the taxi driver was not Ben. On December 14th, police discovered that Ben Blakely's grandmother, grandfather, and younger brother, Jake, lived near the abandoned warehouse. When officers visited Ben's grandmother, she later explained that Ben had taken a suitcase from her a few days prior. He had arrived in a hurry, emptied the contents onto the floor, and left without explanation. She stated that Ben returned home 2 days after Jaden went missing and threw his mountain bike into the shed. The bike was dirty when he returned. She also mentioned that 2 shovels had been missing, only to reappear later, covered in a thick layer of dirt. The presence of the shovels raised questions about Ben's intentions and the possible involvement of an accomplice. Notably, Ben and his younger brother, Jake Blakely, aged 17, were also acquaintances of Jaden. Witnesses reported seeing Ben and Jake riding mountain bikes together. As the investigation progressed, police found sufficient cause to suspect Jake's involvement and subsequently arrested him. The suitcase that Ben had returned to his grandmother's barn was sent to a laboratory for analysis to determine whether it contained Jaden's DNA. Based on the available evidence, police developed a theory that Jaden had been killed in an abandoned barn, placed into the suitcase, and then moved to another location for burial. However, searching for Jaden's body in the vast fields surrounding Didcot proved to be a challenging task. To help narrow the search area, police employed aviation to assist in the investigation and estimate the probable location of Jaden's burial site. Using aerial photography, officers identified 10 locations showing significant recent changes in the soil surface. The police initially examined several of these sites, but found no trace of Jaden's body. Before all 10 locations could be inspected, a new lead emerged when Jake Blakely began cooperating with authorities. He directed police to check his uncle's grave at a local cemetery in Didcot, near All Saints Church. This cemetery was among the original 10 locations, although it had been considered low priority because soil disturbances are common in cemeteries. Police secured the cemetery after receiving information from Jake Blakely, who suggested that Jaden's body might be hidden in his uncle's grave. This method of concealment was unprecedented for the police. Jake and Ben's uncle had reportedly died in 2006. The new developments attracted extensive media attention, as this was the first case in the country where a victim's body had been hidden in an existing grave. A tent was erected at the cemetery to facilitate a forensic examination. Following this setup, Jaden's family received devastating news. Her body had been found in the grave of Ben and Jake Blakely's uncle. The body was discovered without clothing or jewelry. Forensic experts determined that Jaden had been severely beaten prior to her death. Specifically, her neck showed signs of strangulation, which the pathologist confirmed as the cause of death, with asphyxia being the official cause. While in prison awaiting trial, Ben Blakely changed his defense strategy, and he and his attorney drafted a confession letter admitting that Ben was responsible for Jaden's death. However, he maintained that the act had not been intentional. According to his account, a heated argument led him to push Jaden, causing her to fall from a bridge near an abandoned warehouse. Ben claimed he had attempted to revive Jaden, but failed. He initially buried her in a separate location and later moved the body to the cemetery, interring it in his uncle's grave. However, the autopsy contradicted his story. There was no evidence of a fall, and instead, her face exhibited signs of blunt force trauma. The official cause of death was asphyxiation by strangulation, indicating that Ben's account was false. Ben Blakely appeared to be attempting to minimize his responsibility for Jaden's death. Jaden's father had passed away from heart problems before the trial began. On June 23, 2014, Ben Blakely appeared in court, and it was evident that he showed no remorse for his actions. His behavior was provocative and aggressive, demonstrating indifference toward the lives of Jaden and her unborn child. During the 4-week trial, evidence revealed that Ben Blakely, from reading Burke's, had a history of being a violent and controlling partner. 3 of his previous girlfriends testified against him, recounting experiences of abuse during their relationships with him. They reported that he would confiscate their phones, physically assault them, and even grab them by the throat if they responded back or if he suspected infidelity. Throughout the trial, Ben received multiple warnings from the judge for using profanity both in the dock and on the witness stand, where he repeatedly shouted at the prosecutor, Richard Leem. His outbursts were so extreme that Jaden's mother and other family members were forced to leave the courtroom in tears on several occasions. Judge Patrick Eccles was also pushed to his limits and ordered Ben Blakely to be taken to the cells to allow the trial to continue without him present. Jake Blakely, who was under 18 at the time, claimed he had no knowledge of the suitcase's contents and believed he was burying weapons or dead animals. He was persuaded by his brother, Ben, who promised him an Xbox console and $100 in return for carrying out the task. The prosecutor argued that the crime was premeditated, suggesting that Ben Blakely deliberately took Jaden to a remote location where he could commit the offense without being observed. It is believed that Blakely's actions were motivated by a desire to control Jaden's life, which had been disrupted by her pregnancy and her wish to start anew. Ben Blakely did not want to become a father. Jaden's mother, Samantha Shrewsbury, has publicly supported the creation of a domestic violence registry. In an interview with Sky News, she expressed her wish to prevent other families from experiencing similar tragedies. She recalled the traumatic experience of identifying her daughter's body and stated that the memory would haunt her forever. In the year preceding Jaden's death, Samantha believed that Jaden had been the target of Ben's abuse. Samantha remembers an incident when Ben came to her apartment building the day after he had verbally and physically assaulted Jaden. He managed to enter the building and banged on the door, demanding to see Jaden. Samantha refused him entry, and in response, he spat on her before leaving. That same day, Jaden went outside to smoke, and unfortunately, Ben found her. Samantha did not see or hear from Jaden for the following 2 weeks. During that period, she assumed that Jaden had gone to Ben's house. As a result, contacting Jaden became difficult because Ben had destroyed her phone or SIM card. Despite his horrific behavior, which included burning, beating, and starving Jaden, Ben remained in denial about his true nature. The jury deliberated for 20 hours before delivering their verdict. Ben Blakely was found guilty of willfully murdering Jaden Parkinson. The judge stated that Ben Blakely had taken 17-year-old Jaden Parkinson to a remote area near Upton, where he strangled her to death. The judge also noted that Ben's behavior toward Jaden had been characterized by irrational jealousy, physical abuse, and emotional manipulation throughout their relationship. The judge found that Ben Blakely had assumed control over Jaden's daily life. To isolate her, he confiscated her phone and restricted her movements while she was in the boarding house, even forbidding her from using the toilet and forcing her to urinate in plastic bottles. Despite Ben's abusive behavior, Jaden fought to leave him. She finally summoned the courage to end their relationship the previous November. Ben threatened to publicly share intimate photos of them together. The court sentenced Ben Blakely to life imprisonment for murder. Ben's younger brother, Jake Blakely, received a 3-year prison sentence for perverting the course of justice. Moving on to the next case. Shafilia Ahmed. Shafilia Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilia's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally came from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At about the age of 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for work. While living there for some time and working, Iftikhar fell in love with a foreign woman and married her. Soon he became a father. However, when he returned to Pakistan and informed his family about his marriage, they did not accept it. Iftikhar's family then applied heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani woman. Despite Iftikhar's initial resistance, he eventually yielded to his family's insistence and married a Pakistani woman named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returned to Britain and, after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorced her. Some time later, Iftikhar called his second wife, Farzana, to Britain from Pakistan. Upon arriving in Britain, Iftikhar began living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It was here that on July 14, 1986, Shafilia Ahmed was born. Shortly after Shafilia's birth, the family moved to the town of Warrington in Britain. It was here that Shafilia completed her early education. During this period, 2 more daughters were born, and Iftikhar's family grew larger. Although the family lived in Britain, Iftikhar used to take his wife and children to Pakistan for vacations during holidays. By 2003, Shafilia had turned 17 and was studying law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafilia and the other children had a break on February 18, 2003, she went to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During the trip, the family attended a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after the wedding, a major incident occurred with Shafilia. She accidentally drank fennel floor cleaner. Fennel is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors and homes. Because it is made by mixing chemicals and soap, drinking it caused severe pain in Shaphilia's throat. It was initially reported that Shaphilia drank the fennel because her parents pressured her into an arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Due to this pressure, Shaphilia allegedly drank the fennel intending to end her life. Later, her parents claimed that someone had poured fennel into an old water bottle, normally used for drinking, and in the darkness of the night, Shaphilia mistook the fennel for water and drank it. As a result, she endured significant pain and was admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Because her injury was quite severe, she had to remain in the hospital for an extended period. Meanwhile, the holidays of other family members ended, so Iftikhar took his wife and 2 children back to Britain, leaving Shaphilia in Pakistan for treatment. Shortly after, Iftikhar arranged for Shaphilia's return, and on May 27, 2003, she returned to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shaphilia was admitted to a hospital for treatment via ambulance. After several months of care, Shaphilia's throat healed considerably, and she returned to college. Alongside her studies, she also started a part-time job. However, on September 18, 2003, her college teacher noticed that Shaphilia had not attended classes for the past week. Attempts were made to contact her by phone, but she could not be reached. When the teacher inquired with Shaphilia's parents, they revealed that Shaphilia had not been home for the past week. Their daughter had been missing for a week, and her parents had not yet filed any complaints, which struck the teacher as very unusual. Immediately afterward, the teacher informed the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrived at Shaphilia's house to investigate and began questioning her parents. Shaphilia's parents stated that they last saw her at home on September 11, 2003, and had not seen her since. The police then asked why, if their daughter had been missing for a week, they had not filed a complaint sooner. Shaphilia's parents responded that this was not the first time she had gone missing for a few days, as it had happened several times before. Upon checking records, the police found that Shaphilia had previously gone missing multiple times. The first incident occurred when she was only 12 years old, on March 10, 1998, when she ran away with her younger sister. At that time, her parents filed a missing persons report for both daughters with the police. Shaphilia returned home with her sister later that evening. According to records, she ran away a second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmed, filed a missing report. After extensive searching, the police found Shaphilia sitting in a park. For a third instance, Shaphilia left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. She did not return for 2 days, and on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphan children and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report, the police spoke with Shaphilia and her parents. Once the situation was clarified, Shaphilia returned home. Later, on February 18, 2003, Shaphilia, along with her 2 sisters and parents, traveled to Pakistan for a family function and disappeared shortly after returning to Britain. Looking at her past records, the police initially suspected that Shaphilia may have gone somewhere again and would return home in a few days. They attempted to locate her in all possible places, but even after several days, they could find no trace of her. Considering her history of running away, the police were somewhat lax in their investigation this time. Subsequently, local media began criticizing the police for their inaction. As a result, public demand for a thorough search for Shaphilia increased. Due to this pressure, the police accelerated their investigation. They discovered numerous poems written by Shaphilia at her home, revealing her dissatisfaction with her household. Her parents wished for her to lead a traditional Pakistani girl's life, but she preferred Western culture. Through her poetry, she expressed this pain. As Shaphilia's poems reached the public, the case gained momentum, increasing pressure on the police to find her. Law enforcement intensified their search in locations Shaphilia might have visited. Eventually, CCTV footage appeared, and her parents initially confirmed that the girl in the footage was indeed Shaphilia. This gave the police hope that she was alive. However, the case took a new turn when the CCTV footage was shown to Shaphilia's class teacher. The teacher stated that the girl in the photo was not Shaphilia Ahmed. Some other people also confirmed, upon watching the CCTV footage, that the girl in the footage was not Shaphilia. The police found it very strange that Shafilia's parents themselves had failed to recognize their daughter in the footage. Many questions arose in the minds of the investigators, and to find answers, they secretly installed audio recording devices in Shafilia's home. Through these devices, the police listened to everything happening inside the house. According to the recordings, on one occasion, Iftikhar was heard saying that in Britain, if you kill 40 people and there is no evidence against you, the law cannot touch you. On another occasion, Iftikhar was heard asking what could happen if the police collected DNA samples from inside the car. Furthermore, the recordings captured suspicious conversations that led the police to suspect that Shafilia's father might have been involved in her disappearance. As the investigation increasingly focused on Iftikhar Ahmed, the police used the audio evidence and on December 18, 2003, arrested Iftikhar and his wife Farzana Ahmed, along with 5 other family members, on suspicion of murdering Shafilia and concealing her body. These arrests were made solely on suspicion, with the hope that the ongoing investigation would uncover concrete evidence against them. However, no evidence was found implicating any of the arrested individuals. Eventually, the police released all of them. By 2004, a year had passed, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafilia Ahmed. The police continued efforts to locate her. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the well-known Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. Once the floods subsided, the body of a girl was discovered in extremely poor condition on the riverbank. The location where the body was found was 70 miles from the place where Shafilia Ahmed had disappeared, and the police still doubted whether the corpse was hers. To confirm her identity, DNA samples were collected from the body and compared with those of Iftikhar and Farzana. A major twist occurred when the DNA of the body matched Iftikhar's samples, confirming that the body was indeed Shafilia Ahmed. After a year of searching for her, the investigation finally ended with the discovery of her corpse. The biggest question before the police was who had murdered Shafilia Ahmed and why. However, doubts had already arisen regarding her parents, and since 2003, Iftikhar and Farzana, along with 5 others, had been previously arrested. Consequently, Shafilia's parents were once again arrested and questioned. The trial of this case was also ongoing, but even this time, no accusations could be proven against them, which led the police to release them once again. However, following that, the police detained some other suspects and continued the investigation against all of them. Yet, despite numerous efforts, the police were unable to reach the murderer. As time passed, people gradually began to forget about Shafilia Ahmed's case. Shafilia had disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, 7 years had passed since Shafilia's death. By this point, Shafilia's family had also moved on from the incident and had become engaged with their daily lives. But then, on August 25, 2010, a significant theft occurred at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the focus of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Because of this, when the theft occurred at this house, it began making headlines on the front pages of newspapers. Yet once again, this placed heavy pressure on the police. Despite working diligently, the police were quickly drawn into the search for the thief. After many days of intense work, the police made a revelation that surprised everyone. In fact, the police arrested not an outsider, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft from the house. Alicia was, in fact, Shafilia's younger sister. According to Alicia, she had not received as much money from home as she demanded and required. For this reason, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money from her own home. Nevertheless, the police had solved the theft case very quickly. However, the police noticed an opportunity at this point. They began questioning Alicia about her sister Shafilia, who had disappeared many years prior, and reopened the file related to the Shafilia case. In the initial discussions, the police suspected that Alicia knew something about Shafilia's disappearance that the world was still unaware of. The police officers attempted to uncover what had happened to Shafilia, but Alicia refused to cooperate with them. Then, the police told Alicia that she had orchestrated a theft in her own house, which could result in a long prison sentence for her. Yet, if she could provide any information about Shafilia that no one else knew, her sentence could be significantly reduced. Subsequently, when Alicia revealed certain details to the police, everyone was left astonished. Alicia explained that it was not someone else, but her father, Iftikhar, and her mother, Farzana Ahmed, who who had beaten Shafilia Ahmed in front of all the sisters. Then their father placed polythene over her face, and due to suffocation, she died. Afterwards, he placed Shafilia's body in his car and threw it into a distant jungle. However, because of a flood, the body drifted from the jungle to the riverbank. According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzana had never approved of their daughter's modern lifestyle. On the surface, Shafilia had begun falling in love with a boy. When this came to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly attempted to arrange Shafilia's marriage with a boy of their choice. When the family traveled to Pakistan for a family function, there was an attempt to forcibly marry Shafilia to a boy there. Shafilia refused to marry for this reason, and she consumed fennel. Following that, her health declined, and the marriage did not take place. When Shafilia returned to Britain, her family members there again insisted on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. When Shafilia repeatedly refused this marriage, her father became angry, initially beating her in rage, and then covering her face with a polythene bag. Due to suffocation, Shafilia Ahmed died. Immediately after this revelation, Alicia Ahmed became a government witness in the case. In return, she is guaranteed a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzana and Iftikhar are arrested, and a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both remain in jail for several months following the arrest. Nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. During further investigation, the police gather crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case commences at the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder. But when Farzana begins to fear that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she ultimately admits in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilia Ahmed's murder was committed not by anyone else, but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she attempted to stop Iftikhar, but instead, he beat and threatened her family, saying that if any of them ever spoke about this to anyone, their fate would be the same as Shafilia's. By now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Additionally, the police, who had collected evidence, confirmed that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilia and then disposed of her body deep in the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck the area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilia's body drifted and eventually reached the riverbank. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body following the murder. They are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also established in court that this act was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilia Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. Thus, with this, the case of Shafilia Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature itself also desired that Shafilia Ahmed receive justice and that her killers be punished. Therefore, although delayed, Shafilia's parents, her murderers, are ultimately sentenced. Moving on to the next case. The case of Madeline Kingsbury. Madeline Kingsbury, 26, is a healthcare worker who was born and raised in Minnesota. She is the mother of 2 small children, Eliana and Noah. She not only looks after her family, but also manages to juggle her job with her personal duties. On March 31, 2023, Madeline was reported missing after she failed to appear for work at the Mayo Clinic and did not pick up her children from daycare. The police launched an investigation into her disappearance. By reviewing surveillance footage, they identified the strange path her truck traveled on the day she vanished. The footage showed the truck moving toward rural Fillmore County, which coincidentally happens to be where Madeline's former lover, Adam Fravel, resides. While the search for Madeline continued, Fravel requested custody of their 2 young children from the Kingsbury family. This move caused concern and suspicion among the public. He tried to keep the children with a relative during the time their mother was missing. According to court filings, social workers forced him to return them after 72 hours. Additionally, the victim's sister, Megan Kingsbury, said that Fravel had not contacted her family for 3 days after Madeline disappeared. Following a period of silence about her vanishing, Fravel eventually expressed his wish for Madeline's safe return. In a statement issued through his lawyer, Fravel rejected claims that he was involved in Kingsbury's disappearance and asserted that he was cooperating with law enforcement to help bring her back. Sheriff Tom Williams stated that Madeline was last observed with Fravel when the two dropped off their children at daycare early on March 31, 2023. These details quickly made Fravel a suspect in Madeline's disappearance and led police to question him. Fravel informed investigators that he drove Madeline's truck south into Fillmore County at around 10 a.m. and that she was not at home when he returned later in the day. However, according to the criminal complaint, police monitored Madeline's truck, and the timeline did not align with Fravel's version. Instead, the truck departed later than he claimed, heading south on Highway 43 toward Fravel's residence in Mabel. The truck was soon located by police. Williams stated the truck matched the description of the 2014 dark blue Chrysler Town and Country minivan Madeline was driving between 10 a.m. and 1:30 p.m. that day. The vehicle was seized and examined for evidence. Investigators also located Madeline's phone, wallet, and identification inside her house. Madeline's disappearance sent shockwaves through the small community in southern Minnesota, triggering a massive search that included nearly 2,000 people across southeastern Minnesota during the following week. After significant efforts by both law enforcement and volunteers, a woman's body was discovered on June 7, 2023. A Fillmore County Sheriff's deputy located her body along a gravel road near Highway 43, north of Mabel, Minnesota. The body had been wrapped in a gray bedsheet and secured with black tape. The medical examiner determined that she likely died from asphyxiation. Sobs echoed through the press conference as officials revealed that an autopsy confirmed the remains were Madeline's. Police stated the location was close to the home of Fravel's parents in Mabel, Minnesota. The following day, Fravel was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. In the first court appearance, the affidavit disclosed Fravel's history of domestic violence, including claims that he strangled Madeline in 2021 in front of their children. Text messages taken from Madeline's phone further reinforced the accusations of his abusive conduct. Fravel and Madeline had been in a relationship for 7 years before she went missing. According to her friends and family, she frequently complained that Fravel never contributed to work around the house. On October 9, 2023, Fravel was indicted on murder charges, including first-degree murder with premeditated homicide and first-degree murder with a prior domestic violence conviction. The indictment emphasized the gravity of the crime and the evidence indicating that Madeline's death was not accidental. As a consequence, Fravel's bail was considerably raised. Later on March 19, 2024, a preliminary hearing took place before the trial. Fravel's lawyer requested that the public be barred from accessing any audio or video statements made about Fravel during the trial. A few days afterward, Winona County Judge Nancy Beitendorp approved this request. Angered by the judge's decision, Madeline's friends and family told the media that they would continue to tell her story to seek justice for her and that her family would regain custody of her children. Under pressure from the community and the media, the court chose to move Madeline's trial from Winona to Blue Earth County to maintain impartiality. On October 7, 2024, the trial commenced in the Mankato courthouse, presenting testimony from more than 100 witnesses, including Madeline's friends and family, law enforcement, and forensic specialists. The evidence contained testimony regarding Fravel's prior violent actions, surveillance recordings, and related forensic results. After several days of deliberation, a month later, the jury delivered a verdict finding Adam Fravel guilty on all 4 murder charges: first-degree murder with premeditation, first-degree murder with a prior domestic violence conviction, second-degree murder with premeditation, and second-degree murder committed during the course of a crime. He is scheduled to be sentenced on December 17th and could potentially spend life in prison. Members of both the Madeline and Fravel families were present when the verdict was announced. Some members of the Fravel family cried as the guilty verdict was read. Speaking to reporters outside the courthouse afterward, David Kingsbury, Madeline's father, stated that justice had been served, but that it would not bring his daughter back. He expressed that Fravel could never be punished enough. They lost a daughter, a mother, an aunt, a sister, and her children were suffering. Still, the fact that the perpetrator had been held accountable offered some comfort to those who loved Madeline. The guilty verdict represents an important victory for Madeline Kingsbury's family and the community that supported them. It stands as proof of the strength of collective effort, the determined pursuit of justice, and the lasting love for a young woman whose life was tragically taken. Even though nothing can remove the pain, The outcome of the trial has delivered justice to the victim and her family. The community and the family continue to honor Madeleine by creating funds and initiatives in her name to increase awareness about domestic violence. She will remain alive not only in the hearts of those who loved her, but also within the shared memory of a community that united to fight for the truth and ensure her story is never forgotten. Moving on to the next case. The case of Shelby Von Holt. Shelby Von Holt was born on September 7, 2000, in Fort Wayne, Indiana, USA, as a cheerful young girl. She was the second of 5 children in her family, which included her mother, Char Hartman, father, Von Holt, older sister, Peyton Hartman, and younger siblings, Devin Von Holt and Isaac Von Holt. Shelby graduated from Troy Center High School in 2018 and spent the following 2 years working at a steakhouse and other establishments. During this period, she was considering her future career path and seemed inclined toward a therapeutic field, though she had not yet determined her exact specialty. At age 20, Shelby was living life to the fullest, known for her cheerful personality that made her the life of every gathering. She loved to smile, dance, sing, and spend time with friends. Notably, she was living independently. Although the reasons for her independent living were unclear, she frequently shared cheerful photos on Facebook, many featuring moments with her young niece, Camila, the daughter of her older sister, Peyton, even though she was not active on most social media platforms. According to her mother, Shelby met Valerie Rose Hardick, a 22-year-old woman, on Facebook. Although they reportedly did not have a close relationship, Valerie's life is enveloped in mystery, with rumors of a troubled childhood, questionable associations, and potential mental health challenges. On June 20, 2021, at 6:48 p.m., a 911 dispatcher received a distress call from a woman who managed to convey that she had been injured and claimed that Valerie had shot her. Although it is unclear whether the woman provided her address or if the police traced the call, officers from the Fort Wayne Police Department arrived at Shelby's residence shortly thereafter. Upon arrival, the officers forced entry into the residence and found Shelby barely conscious, suffering from multiple gunshot wounds and lying in a large pool of blood. One officer stayed with Shelby while the others conducted a protective sweep of the residence to ensure no additional victims were present and that the perpetrator was not still inside. This was done while awaiting the arrival of an ambulance and local firefighters. During this time, officers attempted to provide first aid, and a surgeon asked Shelby if she knew who had shot her. Shelby identified Valerie as the attacker. Emergency medical personnel soon took over Shelby's care, rushing her to a nearby hospital where she remained in critical condition but still alive. Meanwhile, Shelby's family was informed of the incident, and Fort Wayne Police Department officers began gathering evidence from her home. A doorbell camera became a significant piece of evidence, and after reviewing its footage, a person of interest was identified, although details were not publicly disclosed at the time. In a remarkable coincidence, a disturbing incident occurred the day after Shelby's critical injury, approximately 50 kilometers away in Ohio. At around 10:30 a.m., the local police department received multiple calls regarding a suspicious young woman lingering around a convenience store at a gas station. According to eyewitnesses, she had been wandering around the store and near the gas pumps for roughly an hour, seemingly attempting to view customers' credit card numbers as they made purchases. Additionally, police had previously received a call from a man who reported seeing the same woman earlier at the convenience store, claiming she had pointed a gun at his back. Taking precautions, police officers arrived at the gas station and arrested the woman without incident. The 22-year-old woman was identified as Valerie Rose Hardick. She was found in possession of a 9mm handgun, the same type of weapon used in the attack on Shelby. Since Shelby had already identified Valerie as her assailant, the police were even more certain they had apprehended the correct individual. The car Valerie had been driving matched the vehicle captured on Shelby's doorbell camera, leaving the scene just prior to Shelby calling for help. Although the investigation was ongoing, Valerie was taken into custody and transferred to the county jail, where she awaited her court hearing in the local municipal court. Shelby was clinging to life after sustaining severe injuries from 9mm bullet wounds to her chest and abdomen. Doctors placed her in an induced coma and made every effort to save her. Unfortunately, 3 days after the brutal attack, on June 22, 2021, Shelby succumbed to her injuries and was pronounced dead. According to her mother and media reports, Shelby passed away after undergoing 4 complex abdominal surgeries that failed to yield the desired results. She received 20 blood transfusions, but the medical prognosis remained grim. Doctors believed that even if Shelby had survived, her legs would likely have required amputation. The brutal murder raised questions about what could drive someone to commit such a heinous act. Based on the limited information available, investigators attributed the motive to jealousy. It was alleged that Shelby had been dating a man to whom Valerie was strongly attached, although his identity was not revealed. Valerie was charged with criminal assault and aggravated threats. Initially held in Ohio on a $100,000 bail for threatening a man with a firearm at a gas station, she was later transferred to Allen County to face charges related to Shelby's murder. Shelby Von Holt's remains were memorialized in a private ceremony at a funeral home on June 29, 2021, before being cremated. In early 2022, Valerie Rose Hardick entered a plea deal regarding Shelby's murder. Hardick pleaded guilty, citing mental illness as a defense. As part of the agreement, the prosecution dropped a charge related to the use of a firearm during the crime, which could have added 20 years to her sentence. In September 2022, Hardick's sentencing hearing was held in the Superior Court of Allen County. As agreed, she pleaded guilty but mentally ill. During the hearing, her defense attorney presented mitigating circumstances, highlighting her difficult upbringing, including the death of her stepmother, abuse by her stepbrother, and a history of mental health issues. However, prosecutors emphasized jealousy as the motive for Shelby's murder and noted Hardick's escalating criminal history. They also pointed out that Hardick was on probation at the time of the murder, having been part of an alternative program due to prior charges. Throughout the hearing, Valerie's behavior was inconsistent. At times, she appeared coherent and fully aware of the situation, while at other moments she seemed nervous, distracted, and even smiled at Shelby's family. Despite this, she answered the court's questions accurately. Although media reports did not specify the exact content of her statements, it was noted that she never expressed remorse or apologized to Shelby's family. Shelby's parents, in contrast, conveyed the depth of their grief during their victim impact statements. Shelby's father reflected on his daughter's love for symbolic icons, such as peace signs, and noted that she was still finding her way in life at the time of her murder. He reflected on Valerie's demeanor during her guilty plea, noting that her voice conveyed a distinct lack of remorse. The grieving father asserted that by admitting to intentionally killing Shelby, Valerie appeared to take pride in her crime, demonstrating a clear absence of regret. Toby expressed his belief that there was more to the story behind Valerie's motivation for killing Shelby than mere jealousy, referencing the defense's argument concerning Valerie's mental health issues. Shelby's father emphasized that many people in prison struggle with mental health problems, and he vowed to continue seeking answers regarding the tragedy. In a heartfelt reflection, Toby observed that there were 2 tragedies in this case. The first was the shocking and agonizing death of his daughter, and the second was Valerie's decision to throw away her future in a fit of rage. He acknowledged that Valerie's children would suffer greatly as a result. It was revealed that Valerie, at 22 years old, had at least 2 children, though no further details about them were publicly disclosed. The grieving father stated that the tragedy would not end at the graveyard or in the courtroom, because true justice could not be fully achieved in such a devastating situation. However, he said he had forgiven Valerie in order to find peace within himself, a decision he believed was guided by his faith in Christ. He expressed confidence that Shelby was with God and reiterated his profound love for her. Shelby's mother, Sharna, also spoke about her emotions. She remembered her daughter as a princess from the day she was born, describing her as a kind spirit who would always help a friend, no matter the distance. Sharna vowed to attend all possible appeal hearings that Valerie's defense might initiate in the future. She shared the pain of remembering her lifeless daughter and the helplessness she felt, unable to protect her. All she could do was lay her head on Shelby's chest while her daughter lay in a medically induced coma. She publicly praised her daughter's courage, noting that Shelby had managed to name her attacker twice and had fought valiantly to survive after being attacked. Sharna detailed the severe injuries Shelby had suffered, explaining that her heart had been racing at an unsustainable pace. Although Shelby's medical expenses totaled nearly $500,000, Sharna did not seek compensation, as these costs were waived following her death. The funeral expenses alone amounted to approximately $115,000, but Sharna emphasized that she did not expect to receive any compensation and did not want any money from Valerie. Holding back tears, Shelby's mother poignantly expressed that memories were all she had left and that she wished she could trade places with her daughter. She noted that on some days, the grief was so overwhelming that she lacked the strength to get out of bed. After the legal representatives completed their presentations and the victim's family statements, the court awaited the judge's verdict. Under Indiana law, the sentence could range from a minimum of 45 years to a maximum of 65 years, with an average of 55 years. Valerie's defense team requested the minimum sentence, citing various mitigating factors, while the prosecution sought the maximum sentence. Before rendering his decision, the judge noted that it was clear the murder had been planned in advance and that Valerie was fully aware of her actions. Her decision to flee to Ohio further supported this conclusion. While the judge acknowledged that Valerie had endured a difficult upbringing, marked by inadequate education, personal traumas, and mental health issues, he emphasized that she already had a growing criminal record at the time of Shelby's murder, including pending charges for a separate offense. Despite her previous attempts at rehabilitation, her criminal history and the lack of success in those attempts meant that her traumatic past could not be considered an excuse. Taking these factors into consideration, the judge sentenced the 23-year-old Valerie to the maximum possible sentence of 65 years in prison. He also ordered the destruction of the weapon used in the murder. According to the American Correctional System's records, Valerie is currently incarcerated in an Indiana women's prison, with the earliest estimated release date being June 18, 2077, at which time she will be 72 years old. After the court session, Shelby's parents stated that they were satisfied with the verdict. However, they later clarified that no verdict could alleviate their pain, especially since Valerie would be spending her life in prison. Shelby's mother emphasized that she would always miss and remember her daughter. This case is particularly notable because the victim, who was mortally wounded, was able to identify her killer. A prosecutor not involved in the case explained that when a dying victim identifies their attacker, this is known as a dying declaration. These statements provide a crucial lead for detectives and are the only exception to the hearsay rule in court trials, ensuring that the most reliable evidence is presented. The prosecutor also emphasized that dying declarations are admissible in court because they tend to produce more trustworthy statements, given the immense pressure and tragic circumstances surrounding them. Moving on to the next case. Tam Shing. Tam Shing FAI, a 43-year-old faculty member, was noticeably absent from work, causing concern among his colleagues. On July 4th, a coworker named Ma tried to contact him on his mobile phone at 11 a.m., but there was no answer. Ma was not immediately worried, assuming Tam Shing FAI was occupied taking care of his family's adopted dog, which had a skin condition and was scheduled for a visit to the vet. However, when Shing FAI failed to attend a meeting at the university's finance department on July 5th, Ma's concern increased. He attempted to call Shing FAI's mobile phone again, but there was still no response. Unfortunately, Ma did not have Shing FAI's landline number, so he could not try reaching him that way. By July 6th, Shing FAI had been absent from work for 2 days without any communication with his colleagues. One of his coworkers finally reported the situation to the finance department, prompting Shing FAI's superiors to call his landline. Unfortunately, no one answered that call either. The police contacted the library where Helen Tong Yenny, the 33-year-old wife of the missing man, worked. Library staff reported that she was also absent from work without prior notice. Originally from Zhongshan in Guangdong Province, China, they had been married for 11 years and had 2 daughters, He-Man 10 and He-Ying 7. Despite difficult living conditions and financial struggles, the family was known to be kind, happy, and cheerful. They lived in an abandoned recycling station on Waju South Road, but Shing FAI often took his daughters on outings in town. Their children were well behaved, and the family appeared to be happy. Given their situation, it was possible that the family had decided to take a vacation together. However, something unexpected must have occurred, preventing them from returning. Shing FAI's colleagues repeatedly tried to contact him by phone, hoping for a response. Eventually, someone answered, but to their surprise, it was a middle-aged man with an unfamiliar voice, not a family member. A man claiming to be Shing FAI's cousin called the workplace, stating that the family had taken a summer vacation to Guangdong province in mainland China. He allegedly had Xing Fai's phone for safekeeping, but could not provide a return date for the family. However, the call only increased suspicion among Xing Fai's co-workers. They considered it out of character for Xing Fai to leave suddenly without notice, as he was known to be diligent and organized. If he planned a vacation, he would have arranged it with his children's school beforehand. Moreover, the family was responsible for 9 stray dogs, raising concerns about who would care for them. Xing Fai's family circumstances also raised questions. His father, a sailor, had gone missing, and his mother was living in a nursing home due to illness. Xing Fai regularly visited her each week, making it unlikely that he would abandon her to go on vacation. Eventually, the police were called. One of Xing Fai's colleagues accompanied them to his home, an abandoned recycling station in Pingqi village. During the trip, a suspicious person was spotted. A short man was seen from a distance near the Xing Fai family's fence before quickly disappearing. Initially, no attention was given to this, and they continued on. Upon arrival, they found the gate to Xing Fai's home locked. The police examined the property and interviewed the neighbors. The abandoned recycling station covered a large area of approximately 450 square meters, but most of it was empty space, about 350 square meters of flower beds. The construction area was only about 90 square meters, and the building was illegally constructed. The original owner had built several tin houses on the site, using it as a waste recycling facility. A stone house on the opposite side was used as a pig farm, with very few people living nearby. As a result, the police had only one neighbor to question, an elderly woman named Wang who lived alone across the street. Wang stated that she knew the family's routine and reported that they usually tended to their garden in the afternoon. Su Wang had limited knowledge of the family's personal affairs, mainly due to their remote location. She knew that the family did not receive many visitors, and the only relative she was aware of was Xing Fai's cousin, Su Xingqi. Wang did not have information about Su Xingqi's address or that of Xing Fai's uncle, who supposedly lived in a nearby stone house. When the police questioned Xing Fai's colleague, they learned that a cousin had answered Xing Fai's phone, leading them to believe it was Su Xingqi. However, Wang clarified that she did not know Su Xingqi's address. She did report hearing cries for help coming from the house on July 5th. In response, the police conducted door-to-door inquiries in Pingqi village and eventually located a man matching Wang's description at a stone house on Waju Road. The man, 42-year-old Su Xingqi, confirmed that he was Xing Fai's cousin and said he occasionally visited the family home to assist with renovations and gardening. When questioned about the phone call, Su Xingqi maintained that the family had gone on vacation to China. On July 5th, Xing Fai had visited his mother at the nursing home and then returned home to tell Su Xingqi that he planned to travel to Dongguan, China, for a few days. Due to high roaming fees, Xing Fai asked Su Xingqi to hold on to his Hong Kong mobile phone until his return. The person seen fleeing the scene by police and Xing Fai's colleague was actually Su Xingqi, leaving after feeding the family dogs. Su Xingqi's behavior and expressions were observed, and he appeared to be telling the truth. His story seemed consistent, and there were no obvious discrepancies. When asked if he had a key to the family home, Su Xingqi denied it. Despite locating Su Xingqi, the police continued their investigation. Going door-to-door in the village, a local resident reported that a stranger had borrowed money from a villager, leading to a heated argument. The villager threatened to seek compensation from Xing Fai's family, who were struggling financially due to his mother's hospitalization and existing debts. The villagers initially believed the stranger was not Su Xingqi, but they suspected the family might be hiding to avoid their debts. However, when the police inquired about Su Xingqi, the villagers revealed that he had been dishonest. They confirmed that Su Xingqi regularly visited Xing Fai's home to perform maintenance and repairs and was always able to enter the house on his own, even when no one else was present. This led the police to conclude that Su Xingqi must have had a key or access to Xing Fai's home. In fact, he did have a key, which Xing Fai had given him, as witnessed by Wang. When the police asked Su Xingqi for the key, he initially denied owning one, claiming he had used a spare key for renovations and returned it. However, his demeanor had changed, and he was avoiding key details. When the police threatened to search his home, Su Xingqi became agitated and suddenly remembered another house key that he had not returned. He retrieved the key from his dresser and handed it over to the police. Although Su Xingqi's behavior was suspicious, there was no direct evidence linking him to the family's disappearance. As a result, the police placed him under surveillance while continuing their investigation. During their investigation, police used a spare key to enter the home, where they found a scene of disarray and evidence of ransacking. Fresh bloodstains on the walls suggested that a violent incident had occurred on the property. The presence of a sink full of dirty dishes in the kitchen raised doubts about the family's claim that they had traveled to China, as it seemed unlikely they would have left their home in such a state before departing. A search of the master bedroom uncovered the family's identification cards in a dresser, prompting the lead investigator to contact the border crossing office. The office reported that the family had not left Hong Kong. Further examination of the house revealed a blood-stained shirt in a side room and a blood-stained plastic water pipe in the corner. Police then deployed sniffer dogs to search for additional evidence and to potentially locate the missing family members. The dogs detected a scent and discovered bloodstains under recently disturbed soil 9 meters away. Furthermore, despite it being summer vacation, their children, Hugh Man and Hugh Ung, were enrolled in summer school, indicating that the family would not have been on vacation. It became clear that the family had been victims of a crime, so a special team was formed to investigate. Due to the late hour, the police cordoned off the scene and restricted access to Pingqi village. Su Xingqi was confined to his home and became the prime suspect in the case. Su Xingqi promptly confessed. According to his statement, he was from Huanpu in Guangdong province and typically lived with his sister, wife, and 2 sons, aged 15 and 16, who suffered from memory issues. Su Xingqi had previously earned a living selling motorcycles in Junction City. However, following Guangdong's ban on motorcycles in 2006, sales plummeted. Financial struggles led him to reach out to his cousin, Xing Fai, in Hong Kong, seeking employment opportunities. Xing Fai helped Su Xingqi secure a construction job that provided a daily salary, including accommodation and meals. After working for half a month, Su Xingqi became dissatisfied with his salary, which was reduced to $220 due to company deductions. He impulsively quit his job and returned to China. However, in 2007, a typhoon damaged his home, and he needed money for repairs. Su Xingqi asked Xing Fai to help him find work in Hong Kong again. When Xing Fai could not find him a job, he proposed an alternative arrangement. Xing Fai agreed to pay Su Xingqi from his own salary to help with household chores and repairs at his home. Su Xingqi accepted this offer and began traveling to Hong Kong every other month to work on Xing Fai's home and garden. Su Xingqi claimed that he and Tong Yenny, Xing Fai's wife, began a clandestine romantic relationship. However, Xing Fai discovered their affair on July 3rd. On July 5th, Su Xingqi accompanied Xing Fai to a nursing home to visit his mother. Su Xingqi snuck out of the nursing home to return home and continue his affair with Yan Yi. Unexpectedly, Xing Fai returned home early and, in a fit of rage, physically confronted Su Xingqi. In a state of panic, Su Xingqi grabbed a 25-centimeter-long fruit knife and stabbed Xing Fai until he fell to the ground dead. Overwhelmed by what had just occurred, he initially wanted to turn himself in to the police. However, Su Xingqi refused to let that happen. Since he could not change his mind, Su Xingqi decided to kill Xing Fai. He found some wires in the corner of the room, charged at him, knocked him to the ground, and tied his hands behind his back. Su Xingqi then covered Xing Fai's mouth and nose with tape and put a plastic bag over his head. Before this, their 2 children were in their bedroom watching cartoons. They heard the commotion and their parents warning them to run away, but instead, they ran toward their parents and saw their father dead and Su Xingqi in the process of killing their mother. The children ran back to their room, crying, and locked the door. Since the parent was already tied up, Su Xingqi left to pursue the children. Su Xingqi picked up a pair of pliers, opened the door, and used more wires to restrain the children. He tied their hands behind their backs, covered their mouths and noses with tape, and put plastic bags over their heads. The children, He Wang and He Man, suffocated shortly afterward. After killing the entire family, Su Xingqi was at a loss about what to do next. He returned to his home to think it over. He considered that hiding them in a ditch or body of water would be too easy to find, and that dismembering them would be too exhausting and time-consuming. He ultimately decided to bury them on their own property. On July 6th, he returned to the home to clean up as many bloodstains as possible. He then began digging the hole, making it deep and wide enough to hold the family of 4, and quickly placed their bodies inside. He also disposed of the murder weapons in the pit before filling it back in. The police believed Su Xingqi's story, despite skepticism about his motive, and took him to the location where he claimed the crime had occurred. He pointed out the spot where the sharp knife, water pipe, iron pliers, and other tools used in the crime were hidden. On July 7th, the police called in the fire department to assist in unearthing the remains. The firefighters arrived with excavation tools and gas masks, as the bodies were buried near a septic tank. However, they quickly encountered a problem when they hit a layer of cement while digging. Su Xingqi had failed to mention in his confession that he had filled the pit with cement before covering it up. The firefighters were unable to break through the cement with their tools, and the police called in a private engineering company for assistance. The engineers arrived with high-grade tools and began drilling through the concrete slab. When they reached a point where they saw human hair, they became uneasy and refused to continue digging, not wanting to encounter a dead body. It took the police 13 hours to persuade them to resume the excavation. After excavating the pit, authorities found it to be 2.5 meters wide and 6 feet deep. The bodies of the 4 family members were discovered at the bottom, all barefoot and wearing only t-shirts and shorts. Xing Fai's body was at the very bottom. His hands and feet were bound with electric wire, and he had multiple stab wounds to the abdomen, back, and neck, with his clothes stained red with blood. The other family members were similarly bound with electric wire. Yenny's mouth and nose were covered with tape, her hands and feet were bound, and her face was distorted. 2 family members, He Yumin and He Oying, showed no obvious signs of trauma, leading police to suspect they may have been buried alive. Su Xingqi was formally arrested and interrogated. During the interrogation, he altered his confession, admitting that he had lied about the affair. Shan Hui had kicked Su Xingqi out of the house and banned him from returning. Despite this, Su Xingqi came back to apologize and was surprisingly forgiven by Xing Fai. Su Xingqi returned to the house on July 3rd to start working, and it appeared that his relationship with Xing Fai had been repaired. However, on July 4th, Su Xingqi attempted to molest a family member. Su Xingqi fled the house in a rage, not wanting to alert the neighbors. The next day, Su Xingqi tried to force his way into the house again, claiming he wanted to apologize. However, Xing Fai had anticipated this and returned home early. They got into an argument, which escalated into Su Xingqi stabbing Xing Fai. Su Xingqi's later confession matched his initial one, with the additional detail of filling a makeshift grave with cement. However, after the bodies were taken away for autopsy, it was discovered that Su Xingqi's account of the events was inaccurate. The autopsy revealed that Xing Fai's murder was more brutal than initially described. Xing Fai had sustained 9 stab wounds to the head and neck, nearly 80 stab wounds to the body, and 10 stab wounds to the hands and feet. Contrary to Su Xingqi's claim, Xing Fai was strangled, not suffocated with a plastic bag. He Yueying's cause of death was the only accurate part of Su Xingqi's account. Forensic analysis of the home found that the cutlery and dishes did not have the family's DNA on them, but they did have Su Xingqi's DNA. This indicated that Xing Fai was not killed in the kitchen, but rather elsewhere in the house. The investigation also revealed that the murder was premeditated, as the cement used to bury the bodies had been purchased by Su Xingqi prior to the murder. Furthermore, the weapon used was not a kitchen knife from the family, but rather one belonging to Su Xingqi. Additional investigations by the police found that the family's bank cards had been used at an ATM after the time of death, but no money could be withdrawn due to repeated failed PIN number attempts. The cash and bank cards belonging to the family were also missing. Su Xingqi's motive for the crime was robbery, and it was premeditated. Whenever the police pointed out inconsistencies in his story, he would suddenly come up with a new explanation. According to Su Xingqi, his family's ancestral home in China needed urgent repairs, and his 2 children required $100,000 in cash to cover their school fees. He was not well-liked in his local community, so he knew it would be difficult to borrow money from his neighbors. He turned to Xing Fai for help because his business trips to Hong Kong had not generated enough income. Su Xingqi suspected that Xing Fai was wealthier than he seemed and that he was very stingy. The reason for his low salary during his time working for Xing Fai was that he was being exploited for low-cost labor. On July 3rd, Su Xingqi traveled to Hong Kong without informing anyone and waited until July 5th, when they had a day off from work. When Xing Fai returned home and found Su Xingqi there, he asked if he needed to cook something, and the men went to the kitchen together. Su Xingqi asked to borrow 1 million Hong Kong dollars, but Xing Fai rejected the request. He explained that he had to use the money for his mother's medical treatment and his daughter's education. However, Su Xingqi did not believe him and accused Xing Fai of only using him for low-cost labor. Xing Fai became angry and ordered Su Xingqi to leave. As Xing Fai turned his back, with a concealed knife in hand, Su Xingqi attacked him from behind, covering his mouth and stabbing him. Su Xingqi then restrained Hu Ying and Hu Man and began searching the house for cash and bank cards. He demanded to know the password for the bank cards, and Xing Fai intentionally gave him a fake password. Su Xingqi did not realize this at the time. Su Xingqi claimed that he had killed others by covering their mouths and noses with tape and putting plastic bags over their heads. However, when he went to the nearest ATM to withdraw cash, he discovered that the PIN number he had been given did not work and realized that Xing Fai had lied to him. Upon returning home, Su Xingqi discovered that everyone had suffocated to death in his absence. He found the food he and the others had been preparing and decided to eat it next to the 4 corpses while contemplating how to dispose of the bodies. After stealing $6,000 in Hong Kong dollars from Xing Fai's body, Su Xingqi buried the corpses and tools in a small pit, then went to sleep at Xing Fai's home. The next morning, Su Xingqi realized that the smell from the bodies might lead to their discovery, so he bought cement and returned to the home. He dug up the pit, poured in the cement, and refilled the hole. Su Xingqi then stayed at the home to answer any calls to Xing Fai's cell phone or house phone, telling callers that he was taking care of things while the Xing Fai family was on vacation. However, Su Xingqi did not expect his ruse to be uncovered so quickly. Even later, he continued to lie about many details, including when he bought the cement and the cause of Yan Yi's death. At this stage, the police did not believe it was necessary to continue obtaining a fully accurate confession. In their view, they had gathered sufficient evidence to proceed. The trial was held at the Hong Kong High Court on October 28, 2010. Su Xingqi initially pleaded not guilty and altered his previous statement. He asserted that his original story about the affair was true and that Xing Fai was killed in self-defense, while Hu Man and Hu Ying were killed accidentally. The defendant stated that he had falsely confessed to extortion and murder brutality, which included physical abuse and suffocation. On November 23, the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict for the murders of Xing Fai and Yan Yi. However, the defendant was acquitted of murdering Hu Ying. Despite this, the defendant received a life sentence for 3 counts of murder and 1 count of manslaughter. The presiding judge criticized the defendant, describing him as lacking a conscience and being unrepentant. The judge also accused the defendant of fabricating the self-defense story and affair to tarnish the victims' reputations. After the deaths of Xing Fai's family, who lived in Hong Kong, surprisingly defended him. They accused Xing Fai of being a hypocrite and the real villain. According to them, Xing Fai was exploiting Su Xingqi for cheap labor and taking his money. However, the neighbors and residents of Pingqi village were outraged by these claims, forcing Su Xingqi's family to return to China to avoid the backlash. The crime was considered one of the most shocking in Hong Kong's history. The community showed an outpouring of support for the Xing Fai family, with many visiting their home to offer condolences. Netizens also raised more than enough money to cover the funeral expenses. Additionally, the family's 9 stray dogs were adopted by another family. Every year on July 5th, the adoptive family would take the dogs for a walk in Pingqi village, near the home of their former owners. On August 9th, 55-year-old Su Xingqi passed away in Hong Kong's Stanley Prison due to liver cancer. Moving on to the next case. The case of Tracy Hallett and J.B. Beasley. J.B. Beasley was born on July 31, 1981, in Troy, Alabama, to Cheryl and Hilton Lanier J.B. After her parents divorced in 1984, J.B. relocated to Dothan with her mother. Her mother later married Joey Begun, who became J.B.'s caring stepfather, and she and her 4 sisters were raised in a home in Dothan. She was an outgoing girl who enjoyed many activities, including cheerleading, dance lessons, playing the piano, and swimming. J.B. and her sisters also modeled for multiple companies. During high school, she met Tracy Hallett, with whom she quickly created a close bond. Tracy was born on March 3, 1982, to Carolyn and Robert Hallett, a police officer with the Dothan Police Department. Her life changed dramatically when her father passed away when Tracy was 5 years old. Her mother later married Mike Roberts, who raised Tracy alongside her mother. In contrast to her friend JB, Tracy was shy but consistently put others ahead of herself. As the oldest child in the household, she took her responsibilities seriously, especially concerning her two younger brothers. Tracy attended Northview High School, excelling academically and taking part in extracurricular activities as a cheerleader, often alongside JB. As the two girls began stepping into adulthood, they were unaware of the tragic fate awaiting them. On July 31, 1999, JB and Tracy left Dothan in JB's 1993 Mazda 929 to go to a birthday party in Headland, a town just a few miles to the north. However, unfamiliar with the roads, the two young women soon encountered trouble. Just minutes after leaving home, they became lost. At around 10:30 p.m., JB and Tracy stopped at a BP gas station in Headland to ask for directions. The station was located near the intersection of routes 173 and 431. Using the pay phone at the gas station, they phoned their friends to try to get clearer instructions on how to reach the party. However, after continuing their drive, JB and Tracy ended up in Ozark, Alabama, about 24 miles northwest of Headland, instead of their intended stop. Still confused about the directions, the girls stopped at the Big Little store at 11:30 p.m. Although the store was closed, they used the pay phone to make another call. This time, Tracy called her mother to say they were lost in Ozark and planned to head home. A woman, Marilyn Merritt, and her daughters later stopped at a gas station to buy a soda. Tracy and JB approached them and asked for directions to Dothan. Marilyn explained the route as clearly as she could, and the girls appeared to understand. She found them polite and well-mannered, and also noticed that their car was clean. Marilyn remembered the girls leaving the parking lot and turning right, just as she had instructed. However, the girls never returned home. The following morning, August 1, 1999, around 8 a.m., Tracy's mother contacted the police to report her daughter missing. Police soon uncovered their first clue related to the girls' disappearance. After Tracy was reported missing, police located JB's car on Herring Avenue in Ozark. What stood out about the discovery was that the car's gas tank, which had been full the day before, was now nearly empty. The vehicle showed indications of having been driven through mud, but the doors were locked, although the driver's side window was partly rolled down. There were no signs of forced entry. Inside, police found JB's driver's license on the dashboard, along with the girls' wallets, which still contained money. However, the car keys were missing, and neither Tracy nor JB were located. A fingerprint found on the locked trunk lid led investigators to suspect that something was seriously wrong. As they examined the scene, they believed the trunk could hold crucial evidence, but were impeded by the missing key. However, after 6 hours of investigation, they discovered an interior latch that allowed them to open the trunk without a key. When police opened the trunk, they made a horrifying discovery: the bodies of the two girls inside. Both victims were fully clothed, but their pants were soiled from the waist down. Each had been shot once in the head. An autopsy showed that Tracy had been shot in the temple, while JB had been shot in the right cheek. Tracy's body also contained a 9mm shell casing in her leg, scratches on her arm, and spikes stuck to her jeans. JB's clothing, especially her new shoes, was muddy and dirty. Police determined that the two girls had likely been shot inside the trunk, although initial indications suggested an execution-style killing. After informing their families of the discovery, an official homicide investigation began. Police found the girls' wallets, jewelry, money, and credit cards still inside the car, suggesting this was not a robbery. Autopsies showed no alcohol or drugs in the victims' systems. Additionally, the autopsies confirmed that neither girl had been sexually assaulted before her death, ruling out a sexual motive. 2 months after Tracy and JB's murders, the state crime lab released a report stating that unidentified semen had been found on JB's clothing and skin. Despite this new evidence, the fingerprints discovered on the trunk lid remained unexplained, as there was no match in the system. With no solid leads, the investigation reached a standstill. As news of the girls' deaths spread quickly, police still had very few clues to identify a suspect. A reward was offered in an attempt to gather information about the murders, but no new leads emerged. However, police soon received an unexpected development in the case. A month after the discovery of JB and Tracy's bodies, Johnny William Barentine, 28, a longtime Ozark resident, came forward to the local police on September 1st. Johnny claimed he had witnessed the girls' murders. He stated that on the night of the killings, he had gone out to buy milk for his 2-year-old son around the time Tracy called from the Big Little Store payphone. At 1 a.m., Johnny returned home visibly upset and initially told his wife that a black truck had hit him near Herring Road. However, during a 4-hour interview with Ozark police, Johnny provided 6 different versions of what he supposedly knew. He first told Ozark Police Chief Tony R. Spivey that he saw a black truck speeding away from the place where the girls' bodies were later found. But his story kept changing and conflicting as the interviews continued. Johnny initially said he picked up a tattooed stranger and drove to the Big Little Store. He later claimed that the stranger got into a car with 2 girls, whom he recognized as the same girls later found dead. Johnny said the group then went to Herring Avenue, where the stranger forced the girls out of the vehicle, leading to a struggle as the girls tried to flee. According to Johnny's statement, after witnessing a confrontation, he saw something in the stranger's hand right before hearing 2 gunshots. Johnny then drove the stranger away from the area before returning home. However, in a contradictory version of events, Johnny admitted to police that he actually knew the stranger he had picked up, identifying him as a neighbor who lived close by. Notably, Johnny's own home was less than a mile from where the victims' bodies were found. Johnny's shifting story did not convince investigators, and he quickly became the primary suspect in the murders of JB and Tracy. Consequently, Ozark police arrested him and charged him with 2 counts of attempted murder. However, several issues in his statements raised doubts. Importantly, Johnny never mentioned any sexual activity that could account for the presence of semen on JB's clothing and body. Additionally, the neighbor he accused had a solid alibi for that time. Johnny initially admitted to fabricating the entire story in hopes of collecting the reward money. Despite this admission, police believed they had the correct suspect. At a preliminary hearing on September 21st, Alabama Bureau of Investigation Special Agent Charles Huggins testified that Johnny had accurately described the victim's clothing and other relevant details, suggesting he had indeed been present at the crime scene. Then, at a bail hearing on October 18th, Johnny provided another testimony. He declared his innocence, saying he never picked up a tattooed man or witnessed anything on the night of the murders. According to Johnny, he went to the store around 11 p.m. to buy milk for his son and then fabricated the story to obtain the reward. The judge denied him bail, and he was returned to the Dale County Jail in Ozark. During this period, Johnny's family members continued to support him. They gave interviews to the media, expressing their belief in his innocence and insisting he was incapable of harming anyone. Johnny's attorney, Bill Kimmons, argued that his client had no involvement in the murders of Tracy and JB, stressing that the 4-hour interrogation had affected Johnny, who became trapped in his own false confession. Johnny's defense also noted that he had only completed 7th grade and part of 8th grade. He said his client had been in special education, suggesting he lacked the ability to plan such a horrific crime. After further investigation, it was revealed that Johnny's DNA did not match the semen found on the victims' bodies and clothing. Consequently, he was released from jail on December 17, 1999. In January 2000, a Dale County grand jury decided not to indict Johnny, officially clearing him as a suspect in the murders of Tracy and JB. This development created a setback in the investigation, with criticism aimed at the police methods used and doubts raised about the Ozark Police's capacity to manage the case. However, police continued to pursue other possible suspects. During the investigation, a man from Michigan became the primary suspect. He had attended a party on the night of the murders near the area where JB's car was later discovered. The man left town shortly afterward, raising suspicions. Police interviewed him 3 times in Michigan, but were unable to account for the 3 to 4-hour gap in his alibi for the night of the killings. However, these statements were never made public by police. The case against him was eventually dismissed after DNA evidence proved his innocence. Another significant lead investigators pursued was the driver of a small white pickup truck seen at the Big Little Store. Security footage captured the truck at the gas station when JB and Tracy stopped to call Tracy's mother from a payphone. The footage quality was poor and did not reveal the driver or anyone entering or leaving the vehicle. It was impossible to track a digital trail because no record existed of a gas purchase at the station at that time. After releasing images of the truck to the media, police asked the public for information, but as leads went cold, both the driver and the vehicle were never located. The final potential lead involved a Mississippi man who had been extradited to Ozark from Jones County on an unrelated drug paraphernalia charge. The man had stayed with relatives in Ozark briefly before leaving town 2 days after the murders, prompting police to question him. However, the interrogation produced no meaningful information, and without evidence, police had to release him. A woman contacted authorities in March 2000, reporting that she had heard screaming and 2 gunshots on the night of July 31, 1999, near Highway 123 South, just within the city limits. When questioned about why she reported it late, she stated that she was afraid of being implicated. Police thoroughly searched the area based on her description and discovered a 9mm bullet, the same caliber used in the murders of Tracy and JB. However, the bullet's make did not match the brand of the shell casing found on Tracy's body. In addition, the bullet lacked markings that could be used to forensically compare it with other evidence in the case. Sadly, this lead also turned out to be another dead end for the police. Several leads in the JB and Tracy case eventually reached dead ends, yet police remained determined to obtain a DNA match as JB and Tracy's grieving families tried to continue with their lives. The case grew cold. Years later, however, a dramatic development revived the investigation. A major breakthrough occurred in 2015 when Rena, an auxiliary Ozark police officer, came forward and publicly accused an Ozark police officer of killing JB and Tracy and others of covering up the incident. Rena made multiple serious accusations linked to a 1999 incident in Ozark. According to her, a police officer stopped a man named JB on the night of July 31, 1999, searching for cassette tapes containing recordings of conversations. These tapes allegedly implicated Ozark police officers in a cocaine distribution and profiteering operation. Rena claimed that the search for the tapes ultimately resulted in the murders of the 2 innocent girls. She further alleged that several law enforcement officers knew who the killer was but chose to conceal it by destroying evidence. They also allegedly threatened her to keep her silent. She specifically identified 3 police officers, Gary Butch Whittington, Rex Tipton, and Eddie Henderson, as harassing and threatening her. Rena additionally accused then Police Chief Tony Spivey, who oversaw the initial investigation, of being involved in the cover-up. However, she did not disclose the identity of the particular police officer she believed committed the murders. Noted American journalist and newspaper editor John B. Carroll wrote an article covering the case. John B. believes that the officer involved feared that Tracy and JB would use the tapes as evidence in a trial scheduled for August 2, 1999, merely 48 hours after they were killed. However, John B. also asserts that Rena was brutally beaten with a baseball bat after speaking out, which kept her from naming the actual killer. The officers Rena accused all denied any role in the murders of JB and Tracy. With no physical evidence, none of them were ever officially identified as suspects in the case. Nevertheless, the allegations spread across numerous true crime websites and social media, resulting in a defamation lawsuit. On January 29, 2016, Keith Coffin, Rex Tipton, Tony Spivey, Eddie Henderson, and Gary Butch Whittington, all Ozark, Alabama police officers, filed a defamation of character lawsuit against Rena Crum, John B. Carroll, and Dean Matthews. That case was dismissed in 2018. In May 2016, Rena Crum was convicted of molesting JB's sister and received a suspended sentence and a $250 fine. Over the years, police examined multiple theories, questioned hundreds of people, and collected DNA samples from several suspects, but without success. It took 20 years and the development of new DNA technology before police could make an arrest. In March 2019, police sent DNA found on JB's body and clothing to Virginia-based Parabon Nano Laboratories, which specializes in DNA. Using a public genealogical database to analyze the suspect's DNA and link it to genetic information led police to a breakthrough in the case. The new evidence connected DNA found at the crime scene to a suspect named Coley McCraney, a man in his 40s. At the time, Coley was not a suspect in the 1999 murders of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett, but the discovery changed everything. Coley, an Alabama native, had lived a relatively ordinary life before his DNA connected him to the crimes. Born in Alabama, Coley attended Carroll High School in Ozark and graduated in 1992, where he was a skilled athlete and served as president of the school's library club. After finishing high school, he enlisted in the United States Air Force and served from 1993 to 1997. Coley's personal life included multiple marriages. He married his first wife in 1992, but they separated 2 years later and ultimately divorced. During this period, his ex-wife accused him of assault and filed a complaint with the Air Force. After the divorce, Coley married again in 2001 and began a family with his second wife. Aside from a child support issue in 1998, Coley has no previous criminal record or criminal history. Coley worked for 20 years as a truck driver for various companies in Alabama. In addition to his trucking career, he recently co-founded a church and served as a bishop. At the time of the murders, Coley was 26 years old and lived on Lisenby Drive in Ozark, roughly a mile from where J.B. and Tracy's bodies were found in 1999. 20 years after the murders, Coley was arrested on March 19, 2019, after a traffic stop in Daleville, Alabama. During an interview with police, Coley stated that he did not know J.B. and Tracy. Police did not disclose any information regarding his possible motive. Coley's arrest shocked the Ozark community, including Police Chief Marlon Walker, who had attended school with him. Rena Crum, 53, who had previously accused the Ozark Police Department of covering up the killings, withdrew her charges at a hearing in August 2022. Coley McCraney, 49, is facing 5 counts of attempted murder for the shooting deaths of J.B. Beasley and Tracy Hallett, and is being held without bail in the Dale County Jail before his trial, which is scheduled for April 17, 2023. At trial, Coley admitted that he knew J.B. He said he had a conversation with J.B. several weeks before the killings, during which she introduced herself as Jennifer at the Wiregrass Commons Mall. He testified that on the day of the killings, he and J.B. engaged in consensual sex in his truck. He stated he never realized that Jennifer was J.B. Beasley. On April 26, 2023, a jury found Coley McCraney guilty on all charges and sentenced him to life in prison without parole. In July 2023, a Dale County District Court judge rejected Coley's request for a new trial. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed exploring these intriguing cold cases with me. If you found the video fascinating, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to Cold Case Mystique for more deep dives into cold case investigations. Your support helps me bring you more compelling content. Leave a comment below with your thoughts or any cases you'd like me to cover next. See you in the next video. And remember, the search for truth never stops.